Hi everyone. This is the second half of my double feature, Gary Cooper double feature. I just published a video on Peter Ibbetson from 1935, and now we're going to talk about Desire from 1936. And this is with Marlene and Dietrich. And we see Dietrich on the cover with Embrace with Gary Cooper. And Desire was the first movie that Paramount cast Dietrich in order to sort of humanize her character. She had made a number of films with Joseph von Sternberg. The last of the films, The Devil is a Woman, was a major flop. He had treated her, he had sort of fetishized her, made her an object of art, photographing her in fantastic costumes, vampish characters. So the studio wanted her more down to earth, but really, how much down to earth can you make Marlene Dietrich? Especially as in the beginning of this film, she's wearing, and for most of it, she's wearing these fabulous costumes designed by Thomas Banton, who was her longtime costumer, and if nothing else, this is Desire is a masterpiece of costume design. She looks absolutely fantastic in these gowns that Banton designs for her. So she is, in the beginning of the film, she executes this very intricate, very compelling jewel robbery. We really don't know what she's doing and how she's doing it, but it is truly an amazing performance of stealing jewels. And now she's on the run. She's successful in the robbery, but she thinks she's going to get caught, that the jewels will be discovered on her. So she has run into this tourist, played by Gary Cooper, and she puts the jewelry, hides the jewelry in his coat pocket. The rest of the film is basically, the narrative is basically hinged on how are we going to get these jewels back from Gary Cooper. They run into each other a few more times. She's unsuccessful in getting the jewels back in very clever comic ways. Cooper is on his dream vacation. He's an automobile engineer. He's about to go back to Detroit. There's a job waiting for him. He's been in the Paris office, but he always wanted to visit Spain. The film moves to Spain. Cooper was in 1936. It was also Desire. Mr. Deeds Goes to Town with Capra, and that probably was the movie that elevated from a star to a superstar. And he was playing all different kinds of roles. Here he's playing kind of, he seems to be naive, he's happy-go-lucky, but he's authentic. And Marlene Dietrich is kind of captured by that kind of authenticity, as she is constantly has a mask on. She's constantly being somebody who she's not. And I have to say the chemistry here, the romantic sparks that eventually develop are ignited in spectacular ways. I mean, Cooper, so good looking in 1936, and Dietrich, I mean, both of them, the camera was absolutely in love with both of them, and they have good chemistry together. They had played before in a early von Sternberg movie with Dietrich called Morocco. So they knew each other, but at that time they were kind of still developing. Cooper wasn't quite, Dietrich thought that Cooper wasn't quite comfortable acting. He was being pursued by, I think it was Lupe Velez, and he was always worried about her during the making of Morocco. But now he's much more comfortable, he's much more confident. He's played all different kind of roles. He's played for elegant roles in Lubitsch's Design for a Living. He's done adventure films. He has done, he plays, basically he's playing Hemingway in A Farewell to Arms for this director, Frank Borzage. We get some good character performances along the way. I'll mention Akim Tamiroff, very small role. He's a police detective who Dietrich believes has come to investigate him, but he's comical. He's kind of a pre-Inspector Clouseau type moments in the film. He's got this great jewel thief right in front of him, and he doesn't recognize it. And later on, we come across John Halliday, who is also in Peter Ibbotson, and Halliday again is playing a kind of forbidding kind of role, and he is Dietrich's co-conspirator in this robbery, and he's becoming increasingly concerned that Dietrich he's going to lose Dietrich to this attraction that she seems to have for Gary Cooper. And he's very good. I think the best scene in the film is and it's very creative in the way that it kind of circumvents the code, because as this love affair develops, do they have a night together? Do they actually spend the night? And we see two scenes where they're in bed, and Halliday goes from one in the morning after, and Halliday goes from Dietrich's bedroom and then across the alleyway, or across the park-like alleyway in between the bedrooms to Cooper's bedroom, and he quickly surmises, as we the audience might surmise, I think maybe something happened that night under the Spanish moon, the influence of the Spanish moon. So we have Halliday up against a crook, a out-and-out crook, up against Cooper, who wants to, under the influence of the Spanish moon and Marlene Dietrich's incredible beauty. He says, at one point they sit across the table eating, and it becomes increasingly ominous, and Halliday says, America's a big country. And Cooper, with a formidable twinkle in his eye, says, yes, 6'3". So the battle is on. Who will Dietrich, which side will Dietrich come out on, with the straightforward American, or with this kind of European masquerade, this reserve? Which side will win out? And we have to mention Ernst Lubitsch, who was the producer of Desire and very much helped develop the screenplay with a number of screenwriters. And in Dietrich's contract with Paramount, Lubitsch had to direct one of her films, and this was the one, Desire. But then, as the screenplay, the preparation of the screenplay finished up, Lubitsch was made the head of production at Paramount in a very surprise move, and he didn't have the time to direct this film. So Dietrich had her choice. Who do I want to direct the film? She chose Frank Borzage. Now, in the midst of the von Sternberg movies, she did make one other movie with Ruben Mamoulian, and the filming of that did not go well. There was lots of fighting on the set. At one point, Ruben Mamoulian left the set. So the studio asked Frank Borzage to come in to direct some of these, to calm people down, direct a couple scenes. Borzage was known as the nicest man in Hollywood, certainly the nicest director in Hollywood, and Hollywood directors had a tradition of being authoritarian and bullying, and Dietrich was much impressed by her. And Lubitsch was actually happy that she chose Borzage, because he was curious as to Borzage's methods in the way he worked with actors, and how he could create such authentic feelings of love, kind of transcendent love. And he, in the book that I'm reading by Hervé Dumont on Borzage, Dumont says that Lubitsch was in fact influenced by Borzage, and he sees the influence in 1940 Shop Around the Corner with Jimmy Stewart and Margaret Sullivan, where there's this similar kind of slow burn. There's an awakening, spiritual kind of feeling to the love that eventually, once their masquerades dissolve away, and of course, Borzage was, in 1936, Borzage was still considered one of the greatest directors in the world. I'm doing a series on him because he's so unfairly forgotten, neglected, even though Criterion has put out a couple of his movies, Moonrise and The Great History is Made at Night recently. In the commentary by David Duval along with Nathaniel Bell, very good commentary. Bell is very much a Borsegi enthusiast, and he mentions Hervé Dumont's book on Borsegi. It's really the only, it was written in French, translated in English, really the only major work on Borsegi. But there's two, we get not one, but two commentaries. The other is by Sam Dagan. She always gives terrific commentaries, and she gives a lot of the connections between Lubitsch, Borsegi, Dietrich. This is one of her best commentaries. But I do have to mention one thing here is about that she gets into is the pronunciation of Borsegi's name. It's kind of humorous, it's trivial, but it's kind of humorous. In the David Bell commentary, Duval calls him Frank Borzagi, sometimes Frank Borzagi. Nathaniel Bell calls him Frank Borsegi. Now Sam Dagan, who's addressing this various pronunciations, she calls him Frank Borzage. That's one I've never heard before. Now in the extras on the commentary of, or the extras on the two Criterion releases, on both releases there's a conversation between Peter Cowie and Hervé Dumont, and Dumont calls him Borsegi. And there was also a interview from audio interview in which with Borsegi, in which the interviewer calls him Borsegi. So I'm going to stick with Borsegi. All right. So that and this is Desire is the last of the Borsegi movies that I'm going to cover that are on Blu-ray. There are some movies of Borsegi that are available on YouTube and also on different streaming services. But I'm always hopeful that Three Comrades will come out. It's sort of a companion piece to The Mortal Storm, which I made a video on recently. Or the Spencer Tracy, Frank Borsegi, I think they made 3 or 4 films together. I'd love to see 1 or 2 or all come out on Blu-ray someday. Okay, thanks a lot for everybody who managed to listen to me this far. I really do appreciate it. Comments are welcome. You guys take care.